Look. WBOK Go and Equity Media Station.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams says police are determined to track down the two suspects who beat and robbed an off-duty officer in the Bronx.
We have a message for the two people who assaulted our officers. We will find you.
23-year-old Tavion Hargrove is accused of stealing the officer's phone, wallet, and gun. His father has been charged with using the officer's credit card. 3 more inmates who escaped a New Orleans jail are now back in custody. Linton Van Buren was found in Baton Rouge, and Jermaine Donald and Leo Tate were caught in Texas. So far, 8 of the 10 black escapees from the May 16th breakout have been captured. And the man who stabbed Tory Lanez in prison claims he acted in self-defense, believing Lanez had a weapon and planned to attack him. Lanez was stabbed 14 times and suffered serious injuries, but is expected to recover. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
It's now time for Let's Elevate, the Arnie and Cary Show with Arnie Philco and Cary Grant.
All right, good evening, New Orleans.
Good evening.
This is Arnie Philco.
And this is Cary Grant. I'm back.
Cary is back. We're both back in
Yes.
studio tonight and this nice Tuesday evening.
Yes.
So many things happening. Wow. Just it's hard to believe. It's hard to keep up with all the stuff that's going on locally
Absolutely.
and nationally. And
I was gone for a week. It seems like 1,000 things have happened locally, nationally, internationally, everything.
so how was the Big Apple?
The Big Apple was cold, rainy.
Really?
Yeah, it was like in the 50s, and it was an incredible change in the weather for us when we went up there. But it was great. Went to a great graduation for my bonus daughter. She got her master's degree in education from Columbia, and it was wonderful. Great event in a beautiful theater, Arnie. The ceremony for her school was in this beautiful downtown theater, which I'd never been to before. It's not one of those venues that does plays or anything like that, but just this nice old theater that had a lot of charm, and it was really a great ceremony. Actually met some people from Louisiana whose kids were graduating too. So
nice.
It was really nice.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah,
First of all, it's no easy
no
entry
easy
and exit out of Columbia.
And that's one thing I have to say. Because of all this controversy, and I know a lot of people have heard about what's going on at Columbia, they actually have the gates locked and padlock chain, and for the first time in probably the history of the university, and security is very tight on campus.
Did you see
Definitely.
protest at all, or
There was a little bit the day of the unified commencement, but we weren't down there. But it wasn't as big because I think of the weather as well. But there was always somebody around with some signs or something like that. But nothing bad, nothing like what we've been hearing about. I think it's just typical student protest. To be honest with you. Yeah.
Well, hopefully some of these protests now with the summer coming on, graduations are for the most part done.
Yeah, the schools are pretty much closed.
Now it should temper off a little bit during the summer.
Yeah,
but when New York was alive with their NBA team, as you and I were talking.
Yes, I want to say this to the fans here. We want our team to do well, but there were side court tickets going for a mere $30,000 a pop. So, and there wasn't a ticket in the Garden for less than $1,100. Wow. Not one seat was less than $1,000. So, and the way that they lost that first game by losing the lead, people were deflated, but they spent a lot of money to be deflated.
Well, I got to tell you, Sunday night and about midway through the second quarter, it was like a funeral. If you were a Knicks fan, they were down 20. Down 2-0 already in the series. Yeah. It looked pretty bleak. They came back a little bit towards halftime. Right. And then they put together a historic fourth quarter. And
Absolutely.
Now 2-1 series. And tonight
it's right there in front of them.
Tonight is a mega game.
They got to do it. They got to do it. What I was talking about this earlier today. What bothers me about NBA players, some of these guys are so talented, like the Big Cat and people like that. In Brunson, you have to bring it for these games. You can't take a game off. You can't even take a half off. You have to bring it because this is it. This is it. I mean, you can be sitting at home in a couple of days.
Well, the Big Cat finally realized he's a 7-footer,
right,
as strong as anybody in the NBA.
Can move like a deer.
Right. Instead of
shoot
shooting
from outside
threes,
and inside.
Yeah, well, and his threes are good, but
can rebound the ball.
When he drives and takes it inside, they're a different team.
He was the number 1 pick in the draft. He has to remind himself, you weren't the number 1 pick just because you went to Kentucky. You were that good. And he's from New York, which he should really lose his mind on.
Yeah. Well, while you were gone, LSU, got a number 6 seed this weekend. So they're going to host not only this weekend, but if they get out of the first weekend, they'll host the second weekend in Baton Rouge.
Yeah,
that's a big advantage.
That's a big advantage.
On their way to go to Omaha.
Yeah, they have an incredible record at the box too. They're 30-5.
Is that right? Yeah,
this year. So this should be very helpful.
Actually, I was surprised they were a number 6 seed. I thought they may have been a little higher than that.
They should have been, but that's fine. They can just
it doesn't matter.
Rolling under the radar.
Yeah, and fine. Tulane had a heck of a tournament. But they needed to win the last game, and they couldn't do it.
I
and
saw that.
So their season is over. But they put together a really good postseason tournament.
I have to give a shout out for my daughter's school, Southeastern. They were right on the cusp of being in the NCAA tournament and didn't make the cut, but they had a great year in baseball, so they did really well.
Yeah. The AD from Southeastern is the chair of the committee. I didn't realize that.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
To elevate up in the NCAA to become a chair of D1 sport.
That's really great.
And, of course, I know you're really bummed about this, but my favorite quarterback, not really, Aaron Rodgers, has said unequivocally, not only will he not play for the Saints, but he said, quote, I don't want to live in Louisiana. So,
we don't want him in Louisiana.
The heck with number 12. Let him go to Pittsburgh.
I hope he gets to live in that nice Pittsburgh, freezing cold weather. He loved being in Green Bay. Go somewhere where it'll snow and it'll be 50 feet of snow. We don't need him here, and never wanted him.
I know Wick is really bummed out here.
No, he's washed up.
Yeah, 5 years ago we might have thought about wanting him, but not now.
I just thought it was funny that when they asked him so directly, he said, I don't want to live there. It was like, you know what, Aaron, sip your wine and your cheese out in California. And
I think it's time to
Orleans.
retire, sit on the mountaintop, meditate, go to the cave, do whatever you want.
Whatever it is.
Well,
we'd love to hear from you tonight. 504-582-9422. I think we just had a caller, but we lost him. So call back. We were just kidding around with sports for a few minutes, and we'd love to hear from you. Cary, I thought we would start tonight. Well, first of all, we got to start with the jailbreak again, okay?
Yes.
Because there was some really good news over the weekend.
Yes.
Three inmates were captured yesterday.
Yes.
Which brings it down to only 2 are left.
Right.
And it sounds like they got a beat on the 2 now as well.
Yes.
So that's good news. That's really good news. In the meantime, lots of investigations.
Absolutely. Yes.
D.A. Williams is really involved in this, trying to collect the evidence from the sheriff's office.
Right.
Has been a little accusatory.
Yeah.
About how the evidence was handled. You got other investigations talking about the timeline.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have, I think at least 10 relatives and friends.
Well, it's higher than that now. They got 2 more today, so it's probably 14 at this point from the look of it.
Yeah.
But that's what I want to focus in on, is that the people who have aided and abetted these guys, driving them around, picking them up, doing sending them money, phones, all that kind of stuff. This should be a lesson learned for people who are incarcerated in their family or whatever. It does not pay to help out. I mean, it just doesn't. I mean, I know what people are going through and everything like that, but now these people are going to do jail time. Their lives are ruined. Their family members are going to end up in Angola. Nobody's going back to the parish prison again. And they'll never see the light of day there. No matter what their charges, they're not getting out of Angola, which is practically impossible to escape from as well. So, but the family members with these $1 million bonds, I don't think anybody will be able to make their bond. Nobody will be able to get out who's helped out. I mean, no matter how low a level you've helped out at or a high level, they're going to be in jail for a while, and they're going to have some pretty stiff charges. And I don't think that juries and judges are going to be very amiable about letting you, like reducing your sentence or whatever it is from this.
No.
I think this is really bad all around.
I mean, I know the magistrate who issued some of these rulings, and look, I think somebody like that is under a lot of pressure given the national attention on this. And I do think that there are varying levels of involvement here. I mean, there were relatives that were literally in the hour after the escape were providing food and transportation, down to the point that a family member, maybe an elderly, is contacted and, offers some help and some... Again, I do think there are different grades of the involvement. And
some people may not have even known you were out like that. That could really be true.
But the reality is, look, aiding and abetting is a crime, and on any crime, and especially one with so much publicity as this.
I can tell you from a publicity point of view, this was amazing to me. It was on the national news everywhere, as everybody knows, but it was the lead story in New York when we were there on the local news in New York, which was almost phenomenological to me. It's a really terrible thing that happened, but it was everywhere. It was literally everywhere. So what you're saying about the pressures on the politics of all of this, from the judges, the governor, the attorney general, everybody is reacting because the whole world's reacting to this.
Absolutely. And, it's also the fact that there have been 3 prison breaks, jail breaks in the last, 2 weeks?
Yes.
And it's almost like, what is going on? And so from a national media story, it's a very juicy story. The one thing I did not like, I saw this on a cable show today, is they were asking one local official here, well, what do you think about the sheriff? Should she be fired? And having the national audience weigh in on the politics just seems totally over the top and improper. Those are decisions, first of all, that'll be made by the elected official.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, and second, it's more of a local story than it is a national story.
I mean, of course. I mean, anything that happens in any jurisdiction, other people from other places can say, this should happen to that person or that should happen to that person. I think that this is all going to play out pretty much the way we all think it will play out in the long run. So, and it will be dealt with by local government, local forces, and the local voters. I mean, I think the local voters have pretty much spoken that they're done with this whole regime.
Yeah.
And we'll see how far it goes or whatever. There's only 7 months left in it. A few months left in it anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think you were here last. Well, no, you may not have heard this. What I said last week is, and I'm saying this more as somebody that really likes Sheriff Hudson and considers her a good person, which I think she is. If I was advising her as a friend, I would tell her not to run. I think this is going to be a very difficult race. I think it was going to be difficult even before,
begin with, right?
Because of some of the things that have occurred. But I think this has just put, in many ways, a nail in the coffin. And there are some very formidable candidates that are running. And I commend the sheriff for, kind of suspending her campaign, focusing on what needs to be focused on right now.
Yes.
I haven't talked to her. This is just me speaking. I don't know if she's going to reinstate it or not. I hope that she doesn't. I think, maybe don't make this run if public service is something you want to continue with. She's a young lady. There will be opportunities down the road.
Yes.
But I think right now the public is of a mindset
I agree.
They're just,
I agree.
They're angry, they're frustrated, etc.
It'll be difficult to get the lifeblood of politics, which is funding from people. It will be difficult to get the voters on your side. What would really help out, and like you said, because she's a nice person and a good person who's trying to do a good job, just spend the rest of your term trying to correct some of the issues that are happening at the jail. That probably would be best for you.
And I think she would engender.
And I think that would engender a lot of goodwill with the public.
Yes.
To show that you just put your nose to the grindstone, forget about the politics, let somebody else be the new sheriff.
Yes, I agree with that. And I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb here. I was not happy. It's not that I'm unhappy with Chief Kirkpatrick. She's almost irrelevant to what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
But I really liked Interim Chief Woodfork. I think she did an outstanding job as NOPD chief. I know she's running now for sheriff.
Yeah.
I think she has a lot of support behind her.
I think she does too.
I would think she's the front runner in the race.
Yes.
Obviously, there's many people that are running.
Yeah.
But I think she would be an outstanding public servant. Now I will say this: she does come with law enforcement experience, obviously, but not necessarily jail experience.
No, which is different.
Which is different.
Yeah.
And that's going to have to be talked about because, first of all, it's not always easy. You get somebody that's the sheriff that's had experience running a jail or a prison.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the whole history. Obviously, I know, Marlon and before him, but if we go way back, I don't know how many candidates had actual experience running jails.
Well, probably none.
Maybe not.
But I think what the issue is for me is that you do have that law enforcement background. You do have a management background. And one thing we have to remind ourselves of, because we're getting a lot of credit to Chief Kirkpatrick, but these things that started, the crime initiatives that started the decline, started on Chief Woodfork's watch. And she was making changes to how police were used and that type of thing, and how the force was divided up, how people were patrolling and those type of things. And that is how you reduce crime.
Yeah.
So I think that we need to recognize that from a management point of view, hopefully, and knock on wood, that if she got the job, that she would be able to implement the type of changes and things that need to happen. Because there are clearly some management issues over there that need to be addressed.
And she's been working in the DA's office for the last year, so she's got
a different kind of
experience now.
And she's been doing investigations with them as well. So she's much more aware of what that side of law enforcement is, because as everybody knows, law enforcement is multi-sided.
Right.
And running a jail is a whole different animal as well. And I think what I'm saying to you, too, is a lot of her people are some of the upper level people in the police department right now who are in the upper management levels because she put them there. So it shows me that she has a better idea of how to pick personnel to put people into the right jobs.
Yeah, well, we have a long way before the election. We need to get.
And I'm not changing the other candidates, because I think that they have good experiences too. There's a judge and a constable as well. But I mean, like you said, I mean, they all have their merits, and I think they all see what the issue is.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I do. And again,
very clearly,
I don't know the other candidates all that well personally. I think name recognition. Yeah, I think Michelle probably brings that more than anybody to start this. I'm going to be very interested to see the finance reports.
Yes,
and
that
see
are about
what
to come
the
out.
fundraising looks like for all of them. Because that'll be important. But there's a couple of stories I definitely want to cover here. But given we were just talking about crime, I mean, this one jumped off the page today. Blake Miguez, a representative from New Iberia, a Republican, who's been involved in a lot of legislation over the years involving guns. Very different than my view on guns. Very, very pro-guns. They should be everywhere. You shouldn't have to have a permit, etc. Has filed legislation advocating the fact that we need to ease up even more on guns, and they should be allowed on parade routes and schools.
Wow.
And these are concealed guns.
Yeah.
These are not old.
Yes.
We'll come back and talk about this just for a minute. I mean, I think this is nuts, okay? I think this is completely the wrong way. And you don't have to be an opponent of the Second Amendment to take the view that I just espoused.
Absolutely.
We'll come back after the break.
Get in on the conversation at 504-582-9422.
Hey everybody, it's Graylin Bryant Banks
and Kimber White Dupree
from the Front Porch.
Some combos are too good to miss. Now you can pull up a chair to the front porch anytime.
Just search WBOK Media and subscribe to the Front Porch Podcast.
Download, share, and hit us with a 5-star rating because New Orleans culture deserves to be heard loud and clear.
New Orleans, are you ready? A fresh voice in the city is here, bringing you the beats, the culture, and the stories that matter. From local music and food to real talk on what's happening in the streets. We've got you covered. Stay tapped in. Follow us on all platforms at WBOK 1230 for the latest updates and exclusive content. Your city, your culture, your news. Don't just hear about it, be about it. Follow WBOK 1230 now.
New Orleans never sleeps, and neither does WBOK. Now, every voice, every moment, and every show is in your pocket. Search WBOK Media wherever you get podcasts. Download, share, rate us 5 stars. Because when you support us, you amplify Black voices and the New Orleans culture.
On last week's From the Press Box to Press Row with Donald Ware.
Hey, can you make somebody fall? Can you make them look bad? Even if you don't make the shot, we get a bunch of oohs and ahs. Even if you don't finish the play, that's part of the game, and that's an exciting part of the game. I'm not hating on that, but we don't have showmen in the game. Name me one guy in the game that's a showman. Jason Williams had crazy handles, and he would do these no-look passes and do these behind-the-back passes. And I mean, sometimes he would do things that would surprise his teammates.
From the Press Box to Press Row is one of the hottest sports talk shows in the country. Join Donald each week as he takes you on a journey through the world of HBCU sports and pro sports and interviews with top sports and entertainment figures. That's From the Press Box to Press Row each week on your favorite station.
Box to Row, Saturdays at 2 p.m. on WBOK and on the World Wide Web at WBOK1230.com. What New Orleans is talking about.
WBOK online at WBOK1230.com.
The Arnie and Cary Show with Arnie Philco and Cary Grant.
All right, we are back.
We are back.
504-582-9422. Come on, audience, give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. We had a number of callers last week. It was
that's because I wasn't here. Arnie.
Yeah, I think that was.
They don't want to talk to me.
They were asking about it. Where's Cary? But we were talking before the break about these 2 Senate bills, companion bills. Senate Bill 101 by State Senator Blake Miguez from New Iberia would allow anyone legally permitted to carry a gun to tote their weapon up to a school's property line. Then a companion bill, 393, would allow the same thing at parades. This is the same representative that championed last year's permitless carry law. And what he claims is that the intent of his bill is to ensure consistency for gun owners. Now, Cary, look, we just at the French Quarter Festival, which was only a few weeks ago, we had a guy on a Sunday start shooting up in the French Quarter.
Right after the festival was over. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And, right now, the only right that the NOPD has, to check someone is when they're intoxicated.
Right.
Other than that, people are carrying it's concealed.
Yes.
And now bringing it to schools. My God, with the number of school shootings we've had,
right?
Why would you need to do this? Even the most ardent Second Amendment NRA person.
Yes. And what I don't understand about it is, from that point of view, if you want to be a gun advocate, and I'm not talking against guns, I'm like you, Arnie. I don't get a lot of this stuff, but I don't have any fault with anybody owning guns or whatever. What gun advocates should want more than anything else, instead of legislation like this, is legislation about biometrics on guns, where nobody can use your gun because it has a thing that recognizes your fingerprint, or so that it can be safe. And that's what you should be first trying to pass this. I think everybody in the country would be behind those types of things. Mm-hmm. And it's not to restrict people's rights or anything like that. I've never advocated for anybody going in people's houses and say, "Oh, give me all your all that stuff." We're not talking about that. But these are just impractical things, especially in a city and area that rely on crowds and tourism and things like that. You don't want people, even the good citizen or whatever, because anything can happen with a weapon. We've seen more people get hurt from accidental discharges and kids getting shot with guns and all that kind of stuff, and we just don't need this. It's just not even, it doesn't make any logical sense.
I mean, the current law precludes anybody from within 1,000 feet of a school, which again isn't that far.
Yeah.
But to bring it right up to the school line, I mean, just again, with so many things you could legislate, and you got a limited time, and it's a fiscal session. Let's again focus on fiscal
Something
issues,
that's
insurance,
important,
as opposed to this. Yeah. We got a caller, Cary. Pop Jones is with us. Pop, let's see. Let me get you here.
All right, fellas. Thanks for taking my call.
How are you?
How are you doing?
You already know I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I'm keeping my eyes on y'all.
Oh goodness, we're in trouble. We're in deep trouble now.
Indeed. The late John Lewis. Mm-hmm. If you see something, say something.
That's right.
And I see where y'all going, man. Y'all coming up with some stuff.
What do you think? What do you think, Pop? I mean, do you think that's a good piece of law to allow these guns right up to the edge of schools and Mardi Gras parades, even though they're concealed and permitless?
Yeah.
Hello?
What's the question?
Oh, I wanted your thoughts. What's your thoughts on this proposed legislation going through the Senate?
What my thoughts about what?
There's two bills in the Louisiana Senate that want to make it legal for somebody carrying guns, concealed and without permit, by the way, to be able to take those right up to the borders of schools and also to Mardi Gras routes. You think that's a good idea?
What, we going back to the Wild Wild West?
Yes.
That's what it sounds like.
That's exactly what we're going back to.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Yes.
Well, at least there are some voices of sanity. The NOPD has come out very much against this.
It makes their job impossible.
I believe the mayor is very against this.
Well, Mario, what is the purpose of that? What is the reason?
Well,
for them passing that kind of law?
The purpose of it, again, this isn't my purpose, but of the author of the legislation, is he wants to level the playing field. So if you are a carrier of guns, you have the right under Louisiana law now, under what was passed last year, to carry without permit and to carry concealed. And so what he wants to do is take it one more step and say, not only do you have those rights, but now you can, basically take it to the schoolyard. And as I've said, Pop, I think that's way overboard. I think it's crazy. And I think we're just asking for trouble, given what's happened around the country.
I think they're very intelligent people. So look like to me, they must have an ulterior. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Well,
it's very difficult to understand why would they do something like that.
Well, here's an ulterior reason. It's green.
Okay.
And it's called money from the lobbying firms.
Yes.
Especially the NRA, which controls Baton Rouge.
Oh, okay.
In a very, very difficult situation.
Yes.
And I don't know Mr. Miguez. I've seen him in action now for a couple of years, and he's very much into this gun.
He brings it up all the time,
right? But I just think it's the wrong thing, Pop, and especially as Cary and I just said. I mean, right now the people are worried about their cost and their finances and homeowners insurance and auto insurance, and I really don't think there's I don't think there's that many people out there crying for taking guns under my belt to the schoolyard.
Right.
But,
Did you have a good? When are they going to come up with something that's going to be a beneficial to the children or the people? Or
right.
It's like everything they come up with seems like it's against the people.
Yes.
Well, it depends what people, but there are certain things that are coming out of.
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. I'm not gonna get you trying to get me in trouble.
I think you know what I mean. Let's even look at Washington. There's a
yes.
There's some things coming out of Congress in Washington that a lot of people like.
So there's a certain
yes.
group. Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's why I'm learning. I'm like I say, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I be trying to learn what's going on.
Well, you listen to Elevated Conversations, my friend. We're gonna make sure you learn everything you've always wanted to learn.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying my best, Warren.
Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, it was a beautiful weekend, man. I went to a crawfish union, had a crawfish and turkey necks and all kind of good stuff.
That's great.
That sounds really
it was a beautiful weekend. I was there all weekend.
It was fabulous.
Well,
it was always good. Memorial Day is always a nice weekend.
Huh?
Yes.
What'd you say?
Your buddy was out of town.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I was in New York, which is nothing like New Orleans.
New York, boy, Manhattan. That's my. I haven't been there for a minute, but
it's quite something.
That's my town, man. Manhattan.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Well, Pop, we're going to go on to another topic because we want to talk about this survey.
I'll be listening.
All right, my friend.
You.
Thanks for calling.
All righty.
Take care. Oh, Cary's telling. Oh, drop.
Yes.
Oh, that may the phone. It's a very complicated phone system we have here at the
When they
studio.
showed me that, I was like, "Hey, I know everything."
Now I see. You told me that. You told me that last week. I didn't listen to you. So, Cary, there was a really interesting story, a big story on Friday. On Sunday in the paper.
Yeah.
About where New Orleans was. It was kind of a misleading, somewhat misleading caption. The caption was Cantrell leaving mixed bag for next New Orleans mayor. The crime rate is plummeting, but the population is dwindling. And, I kind of read the article. It was a long article. I was expecting a lot of negativity.
Right.
And then on the last page, they did a whole page of graphs and comparisons between 2017 and 2024. I want to go through a few of these.
Sure.
Because I think they're really interesting. First of all, kind of the population. The African-American population went from, I'm going to round these off, 60% to 56% today.
Mm-hmm.
White, 34 to 31.
Mm-hmm.
Hispanic grew from 6 to 8. But the big one was 2 or more races, 2% in 2017 to 9% today.
Wow.
That's the growth. So you're seeing a lot of interracial
families and people. Yes.
Okay. That was very interesting because obviously that has a huge effect on the future politics of this city.
The increase in Hispanic, too.
Increase, yeah.
That's a group to watch.
And that's not really unexpected.
Yeah,
I mean, actually, it was a 2% increase. I even thought it might have been a little bit more than that, given what's transpired since Katrina, or since 2017 even.
Yeah.
But let me read some of this stuff because, look, and let me try to say this in as honest a way as possible. Some of the stuff that we're going to go over in a second here is really positive for New Orleans. Okay.
Yeah,
there are some negatives.
Yes.
But obviously our mayor gets a bad rap.
Right.
The question, that people are going to have is, are these numbers attributable to the mayor or are they just attributable to the growth of New Orleans?
Yeah. New Orleans is kind of so resilient. Some things you can't even hurt if you try as a politician.
But there are some very interesting. Let me kind of start with one of the negatives, if I could find it, and that is the population of our community.
Mm-hmm.
We were at 391,000 in 2017.
Yeah.
And we're at 362,000 today.
Mm-hmm.
That is, if you do the math quickly, a 10% loss basically.
Right.
And we are really one of the fastest cities, unfortunately, having lost population.
Yeah.
That's a real negative.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that has to be turned around. If we don't turn that around, the negative implications on our, property sales tax, our revenue, many things, what we get in grants, all of this is affected by your demographics when they do the census every 10 years.
What I always try and say about that is, and I don't know if it's in the survey, but what you have to look at too around here particularly is because we have such close, large suburban areas that I consider St. Tammany suburban. I consider Metairie in those type of areas. And a lot of people have moved to those areas. They haven't really left the state per se, but it seems like almost like they're shifting around. But you're right. I mean, in the city proper, there's definitely a loss of population. But what I'm seeing and what you're saying is there may be some idea of younger people coming in that fill in some of those gaps as we build the economy and those type of things over the next few years. That's the challenge for a new administration.
It is
to make it attractive to people to come live here.
And to make it competitive.
Yeah.
I mean, when you've got not young kids, you've got kids that are, starting their life and earning, and I have as well. Yeah. I mean,
and let them stay here rather than go
we
somewhere.
have to have competitive wages and opportunities vis-a-vis Atlanta and Charlotte and Houston and some of the other southern cities.
Yes.
And part of that is creating opportunities, having a diversified economy.
Right.
Creating the middle class, which again has been an issue here. But let me read just a few of these because some of these are really positive. Visitor spending over the last 7 years, we're up almost $1 billion. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Unemployment rate, we're down 0.7%. Median income. This one surprised me. $37,000 in 2017, almost $54,000 today.
Wow.
Now that's a pretty significant jump. Number of workers we've lost. So that goes with what the population lost. The poverty rate. This was interesting because I really have always thought poverty continues to go up. It's a huge problem in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Now these numbers are not good, but the decline is interesting. We went from 27% to 23% of a poverty rate here. So that is progress. Again, that's a large percentage of a community.
Right.
But at least it's trending downward. Private employers went up by looks like about 500. School enrollment went down. That one we've been tracking.
Yeah.
We have lost kids in our public school system.
We have a lot less kids in our city, period.
Which is problematic because we have physical schools are being sold now, and you have some truancy and some other things.
The other thing too is that you have families who are having less kids than we. Of course, when we were kids, everybody had multiple children, but people have 2 kids now or whatever, and a lot of young people aren't marrying and aren't having kids until much later. So that's a real issue.
Yeah. Our finances are really strong. Our budget as a city went from $600 million. Well, you know this because you did this to $878 million last year. Property taxes, $133 million to $193. Sales tax, $214 to $343.
Yeah.
Those are some healthy increases over the years. Bond rating, you could tell me this. We went from a AA- to an A+. Is the AA higher than the single A or no?
Single A is better.
So we're better.
You want more plus signs and more A's.
Okay, all right. So we're doing better. Crime, obviously, we knew these numbers were much better.
Yeah.
Murder rate, 146, down to 112 this year so far.
Yeah.
Things like shooting incidents, 362 to 272. Non-emergency response time. Now that's a negative. We know that we have some problems there. 86 minutes average for a non-emergency response, 78 minutes today. Emergency response, 17 minutes 7 years ago. Now it takes 21 minutes for an emergency.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah, that is.
Households without vehicle access, 19%, pretty much across the board.
Mm-hmm.
And home sales prices went up 327 to
Yes.
457. Homeless went increased 1198 to 1300, and I think that number's much higher still today. But when you look at all of it, put the totality together, I think the conclusion is that this is mine, and I'd love to hear yours.
Sure.
Is number one, I think people love New Orleans. Okay?
Absolutely. Yes.
Is no matter how challenging it is on different things. We haven't even talked about Sunday. Were you back in town Sunday when the electricity went off here?
Yes.
Oh, we got to talk about that
deal
one
with
before we
miso.
get off the air. Yeah, miso.
Yes.
I thought it was
Miso.
a soup.
Right.
I was thinking miso soup. Who is miso?
Right.
And but I think it shows that people love this city. I think it shows that they've hung with this city, not only after Katrina, but in the last decade. I think they economically we're making some progress here.
Mm-hmm.
We got to figure out the population loss, okay?
Yes.
But I actually, if I was a mayoral candidate or a council candidate, I would look at these numbers and I would be pretty optimistic.
I think you have something to work with, and I think you're right. I think they're better than people would think just because of what we tell ourselves every day about our downtroddenness. Because I think we spend a lot of time, woe is me, and in New Orleans. But I think that they're better than we think they are. And there's room for improvement, and there's room for things that can be dealt with. I'll give you an example of something that people wouldn't think about, but this will check a lot of boxes. When you say response times, the idea of particularly 911 people, EMTs and those type of things, those are great jobs for young people. Young people need to be pushed into those jobs, need to be we need to not have bad response times on certain things, particularly like EMS. It's harder to get people to be a cop, but I think a lot of people want to help, and becoming an EMT is a really great job. And that means the job market changes. That means the home ownership changes. It changes a lot of things. I know a couple of people, or young people, who've just gotten on with the EMS in the last couple of years, and I see their futures as bright, and they're locked into the city as well. They're locals who decided to do something different, and now they're like, oh, I found my place. And I think that's what a new administration should be talking about, getting people into jobs, getting people into these different places.
Right.
And helping out, like you said, with some of the property issues, like, we know we have less schools, we know we have less churches and all that. Those organizations are trying to sell those properties, but reimagining those properties as well is a great economic development thing. That's what we need to be doing, not just sitting around saying woe is me.
They don't need my advice, but if I was a political advisor right now for Helena or for OT or a judge, what I would do is I would take each of these components that we just went over
and talk about how I deal with it.
Exactly. I would do a to-do list. Here's how we're going to improve them or continue the progress we made in each of them. I think that would be a really wise strategy.
I totally agree with that. I think that's what people are looking for, and I've seen some of the plans that people have, and of course they're always broad brush, but like you said, now you have some things where you can answer some particular questions. And some of the things that people want, not like a Trump promise where you say you're going to end the war in a day and you don't do anything. But some of these things you can actually say, these are the 4 or 5 things that I'll do as I'm going through my term that will address these different things, because there's experts in all these fields that can actually give you that heads up.
Well, if anybody's listening, Cary and I are
available and ready to work.
We need a big fee in order to do that.
I'm very unaffordable.
Very unaffordable. All right, we will be back in just a second. 504-582-9422. Cary, I need to plug a program when we come back.
All right.
Because we have a big ceremony on Thursday night, and I want our audience to know that the next class is opening. So just a little appetizer. We'll come back right after the break.
Okay.
WBOK. Online at WBOK1230.com.
Late nights are made for chillin', and you can do just that every Sunday night at 10 p.m. as DJ Wick brings you The Love Zone. It's the perfect way to top off your weekend with your favorite old and new school ballads. So sit back, relax, and let DJ Wick take you to the Love Zone on WBOK and on the World Wide Web at WBOK1230.com.
Hoops, Heat, The Truth, on demand. Ball Don't Lie is now live on all podcast platforms. Tap in, search WBOK Media, find Ball Don't Lie, and bring the fire with you wherever you go. Download, share, and leave that 5-star review, because the game doesn't stop when the show ends.
New Orleans, are you ready for a voice that says what you're thinking? Who that, you might ask? Arrington Gavin. That's right, I'm your guy, host of the Arrington Gavin Show, giving you so much filled with bold opinions, real conversations, and zero sugarcoating. We're going to be diving into the issues that matter: politics, pop culture, and all the above, unfiltered and unafraid. Catch the Arrington Gavin Show weeknights from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., Monday through Fridays, right here on WBOK, what New Orleans is talking about.
Plan on flying? It's time to upgrade to a real ID. Because in order to board domestic flights, your driver's license or state-issued ID must be a real ID, or you'll need another acceptable form of identification. So don't wait. Find out how to get your real ID at tsa.gov/real ID. That's tsa.gov/real ID, or visit your local DMV. And then you'll be cleared for takeoff.
WBOK. Online at WBOK1230.com.
The Arnie and Cary Show with Arnie Philco and Cary Grant.
All right, 6:47. We got 10 minutes or so left in the show, and I just want to do a quick plug, because I'm really proud. Thursday night is the second graduation ceremony for the Starting Block program. Okay. So I'll be with you part of Thursday, or maybe I'll be over. We have a ceremony over at Dookie Chase. Mm-hmm. And in fact, anybody interested, come on over there and see these kids. But, I heard in the last hour we were talking about young kids and especially young African-American men, needing mentorship, needing people that can guide them.
Yes.
Okay. And I got to tell you, I'm so happy with this program we call the Starting Block. Mm-hmm. It's a program I'm involved in with the Leah Chase family. Yeah, all of her family members, and a third family here in New Orleans, the Mintz family. And we put kids for 18 months through a curriculum to learn about careers in the sports field.
Yeah.
But even more important than that, they learn about each other. Every class has a session taught either by St. Aug, Hispanic Chamber, or Toro Synagogue. And we teach these kids about each other's history and tradition, as well as sports.
Right.
We kind of use sports as the carrot, the hook. And so these kids come out of this program not only with a leg up in terms of a career in the sports field, which is really great as they go on, but they really become leaders. It's amazing to watch it. So the reason I'm saying this is that we will be opening the third cohort, the next class, really next week. We'll be recruiting throughout the summer. In fact, you're going to hear some commercials on WBOK for this. But if you've got a son or daughter that is a freshman, incoming freshman, sophomore, or junior at any school, public or private, all over the area, Orleans, Jefferson, St. Bernard, wherever, and you have a young person that's interested in sports, potentially, this is a great program. Totally free. It's not owners. Classes are once a month, over 18 months. They hear from experts throughout the sports field. It's a really great program. So you can go to www.thestartingblocknola.com. thestartingblocknola.com. We're kind of updating the website, but there's a contact section on there. You can send an email saying you're interested in the program. Yeah. And again, we limit this program to 50 students every 2 years. So we've been at capacity or above every year. So if you have a student, please let us know. I'm going to talk more about it in the future.
That's great.
So, Cary, Yeah, we talked about miso. Cary Grant just told me off record, he's the only person that had ever heard of miso before.
I was not surprised, and I have to say this, and I'm going to read it right, that miso is what's called the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator. It's the electric grid operator for the central United States. When they had some issues with Entergy was asked very vehemently by the council and by their regulators to join MISO because of some power outages and things we had happen here. So what happened is they joined MISO, but what MISO is a conglomerate that goes all the way into Canada from down here and basically shares energy with all these different states and territories. And what they do is when they have issues, and whatever this issue is, which they won't tell us, by the way.
They won't tell.
They really won't tell us what happened. But
well, they said that a plant went down, but they won't identify the plant.
But that should be so obvious that, something in Missouri's gone down, we know. Because it has to be something huge to have this rolling shedding of power. So what they do is they do that. They share energy. And what I mean by that is we create energy here, particularly in peak times. Our energy we create down here in the winter because we don't use as much in the winter as people up north use. Then it gets transferred through the grid up and down. So something happened somewhere and they decided, well, we got to turn off Louisiana and Arkansas and some other places. And because of the way the grid is set up, that's why it was so widespread in the parishes that it happened to, because Orleans Parish had 50,000 people who don't live next to each other, literally out of power. There were people uptown as well as Lakeview, Lakeshore, those type of places, and all around City Park, but not the middle part of the city. Some parts are close to the French Quarter and the like, because of just telling Entergy 3 minutes before.
Yeah, they gave no notice.
3 minutes.
Yeah,
and said, flip that switch and don't turn it on until we tell you to turn it on. So that. And they have that power because those groups agree to be part of it. You may have heard as listeners about rolling blackouts that have happened in California, Texas. They belong to another grid system. They all do. But it's just not a good practice, and it's not well done. And to tell somebody in 3 minutes that we're going to turn off 100,000 people in the state is just not a really good practice at all, especially on one of the hottest days of the year.
I mean, they couldn't have picked North Dakota or Minnesota or something a little cooler.
And the other thing that I found out from some stuff that happened at our own house was that some of the people who deal with electronics and stuff like that said it must have been a real power surge and then cut off because there's been a lot of damage to people's stuff that wasn't shielded or didn't have a surge protector. So right now might be a good point to put some surge protectors on, particularly TVs and things like that, because we don't know if this is going to happen again.
I mean, I think, the City Council of New Orleans, has a utility committee and a staff, and they're responsible for the regulation of energy. This is one you need to do some public hearings.
Absolutely.
You need to, first of all, when did MISO start? What's the benefits? What are the detriments?
Should we stay in it?
Should we stay in it? Yeah, because we're at the mercy of a third party, basically, that we have no say.
I would like to see the council and the Public Service Commission band together for once in their lives and really address this as because the council is the regulator here of Entergy, which is a huge concern, and the Public Service Commission is the rest of
Well, I actually saw an announcement that they're going to do a joint meeting together.
They should. They absolutely should, because it's time to kind of decide where CLECO and everybody go with this, because this was just across the board and random as hell. And it could happen anytime to any section.
And a lot of people were out of town.
Yeah.
So
there was all kinds of problems.
Yeah. I mean, and of course we had festivals and it was hot. It was really hot. And, I think people speculated initially before they knew about MISO. They speculated that there was just so much demand that it overtook the system.
And it actually wasn't the sad part, and you're right, and we have to give Entergy credit where credit is due. They weren't having problems. So, I mean, Entergy wasn't about to turn us all off. And I know because of the things that have happened here before with squirrels and all that kind of foolishness. But people have said that, we had our issues, but it wasn't Entergy. This was not Entergy's doing. Entergy was part of something that happened to them.
Right.
You know.
Well, we learn things every day in the city.
And folks, the only reason why I know that about MISO is because working for the city for 37 years and going through this and hearing we're joining MISO, it was like, what is MISO? So it came in handy 20 years later to know that.
Very much. Well, we have an interesting system to begin with on energy regulation because absolutely. You have New Orleans under the city council. Yes. You have the West Bank under a different system.
Exactly.
Than the Public Service Commission.
Yes. You have Entergy Louisiana. You have Entergy New Orleans. It's a conglomerate of things that go on here. So it's already complicated.
Yeah. Well, let's hope, because we're almost at June 1, which is the start of you-know-what, by the way.
And we don't need to turn the lights off when that happens.
No, we do not. And, with all the cuts that have taken place with climatologists and NOAA and other things nationally, folks, we are Tuesday the 27th of May. We are 4 days away from hurricane season.
Yes.
So if you haven't started thinking about it, time to start thinking.
With a FEMA that is not what FEMA was even a year ago.
Very true.
Be careful.
All right, we will be back tomorrow night. Thank you for tuning in. Love to have you join us 6 o'clock tomorrow, and we will be elevating the conversation of New Orleans. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.